What do we want to move on to? The Nexus 2, or exploits, or people suing people, or what?
Let's do the so-called Nexus 2.
I can't decide on this thing. Have you read any on this, James?
Yeah, I have, and my honest opinion is it doesn't exist.
I think I do think it exists. I do think this is a future Samsung phone, but is it the Nexus 2?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that I don't think that this. I'm just thinking it's a Samsung phone. It will have the same kind of lockdown that Samsung does already.
Yeah,
I don't think that they'll the Nexus 2, because I don't think anyone can make. Because Google, to make the Nexus 2, they had to explicitly tell the hardware people that they had no control over this. All they did was make the phone. Google had total control over it. You know, it was designed by HTC, but they had total control over the software. So, unless that's going to happen again, which it probably won't.
And with Google completely bailing on the Nexus project altogether, I'm just not seeing it. I mean, the only way the Nexus 2 can be successful is if you say, like, it's unlocked, which means it comes to everyone. And really, there needs to be both a GSM and CDMA 3G/4G, universal antenna version, in which I buy my phone, or I have a version of the phone I can buy and take to any network, which I'm not seeing happen with this thing. That, and honestly, I'm looking at the proposed specs for this rumored phone. It's only a gigahertz chip. It's not a dual core.
Yeah.
It's not a dual core chip. It's not a thing. This is not the hardware that's currently available. I'm not seeing this be the flagship Android phone
when the Nexus 1 came out, it had the absolute best stuff.
Right, for the time. It's like, honestly, if this is the Nexus 2, it's an overwhelming disappointment, because what I would expect in a Nexus 2 is either a dual-core or a tri-core version of the Snapdragon, and one of the 1.2 to 1.6 gigahertz versions. And honestly, I would expect the tri-core version, just because that's supposed to do so much better with HD video than the dual-core version.
Something one was, which is way ahead of its time.
Right. It's like, even today, 2 years old, almost. It's almost 2 years old at this point. It still goes par to par with the iPhone Apple just released this year. It's like, it really was good hardware. It's a little dated at this point, but not that much.
I'm still very happy with it.
I thought I had more time to decide if I wanted to do that. I'm still pissed about that. It's like, and there needs to be a CDMA version of whatever this thing is, if it's going to be the thing. From what I'm seeing on this thing, it doesn't look like it has the physical keyboard either.
What's the Nexus 1
That's not a qualifier for whether or not it's a Nexus phone.
No, but that was one of the problems I always had with the Nexus 1, to be quite honest.
That it should have a keyboard.
I like the ability to flip my screen up and have the physical keyboard when I want it. I realize the physical keyboard is not as adaptive as the on-screen keyboard, and that it can't switch to other languages and so on and so forth. But it's just a feel to it. It's a reaction with the device, and I prefer the Android devices that are built like that. I don't want to give half of my screen real estate up to the keyboard. Granted, you can largely use the voice control, but it's not 100% at this point. If they get the voice control 100% where I never ever have to use the keyboard ever, I would consider it a fair trade. But until they get it to that point, no. I want the tactile physical keyboard.
Honestly, voice control, it's good, but it's not the best still.
Oh, and honestly, there are times where voice control is inappropriate. Like, you're sitting in a lecture and you need to divide your attention for a nanosecond to respond to an email, or acknowledge an emergency and go, I'm in a meeting right now, but I will get to you in 30 minutes, or so on and so forth, where it's having to... I realize this presentation is important, but can you shut up for a minute while I talk to my phone? It's just... it doesn't fly. It's like, and that's why I still want the keyboard. I still want the physical keyboard. And honestly, the best physical keyboard in the current generation of Android phones I've seen, I forget what it's called. It's not the Evo. It's the other big phone that Sprint carries. And actually, it has very good and intuitive swipe typing, but it also has a very good physical keyboard. It's a good balanced phone. It's that one Samsung makes. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
I don't think that. I just want to personally say I don't think that if the Nexus One came, it should have a physical keyboard.
You mean the Nexus 2?
Yes, Nexus 2. I don't think that it should.
Yeah, see, this is like this is the philosophical debate. We both agree there should be a Nexus 2, and we agree it should be a good phone, and we agree it should be unlocked, and we agree it should be dual band and quad band and all that stuff. But half the people are like you, and half the people are like me. My honest assessment is they should build two versions of it. They should build one that's for people like me and one that's for people like you. And you know what? I would pay an extra $50 for the physical keyboard. I would. It's worth that to me.
Why don't they just build one Nexus One and have a keyboard extension?
Because that's not the same thing.
It's not, but what's the difference, you know?
There's a big difference in that the keyboard's part of the phone, so when I close it and make it part of the phone, I don't want to have my adapter thing I have to pull out of my other pocket and plug in and have my keyboard extension. No! That will be a fail!
They could make it in such a way where I don't know, you could close it on it, make the keyboard, make it basically be a case, but it's a keyboard too. I don't know.
What I would see a better solution if you want to make one phone is put a lock switch where you can lock it where you can't swipe it open. So for people like you who don't ever want to use the physical keyboard, you can lock it.
Yeah, but it takes space to put a keyboard there where you could have components, as far as I know.
But to me, it's a valuable component. Like, this is a philosophical debate in like how you want to use the phone, which is one of the good things about Android in that both points of view. It's like there's an Android phone for you, there's an Android phone for me, and there's an Android phone for him, even though we want entirely different things in them. It's like, unlike the iPhone, where you must buy the Steve Jobs vision of creation. It is the universe in perfection. It's like.
That's good for the consumer, well.
How is that a problem? I know where you're going. You're going to say it's a problem for developers. It's the same damn input.
That's why I said well before I actually said it. So I'm like, well, but it's more of a it's a problem of sometimes it's easier to make something that looks nicest and best with one kind of use. Like, even though, yes, it's the same input, so there's no problem in the actual programming, but as far as aesthetics, you'll have to make something look different to accommodate for, yes, okay, there's going to be a big keyboard pop-up here, let's make sure it doesn't block anything the user needs to see, which happens on Android a lot, actually. Rather than a physical keyboard, we'll know that there'll be a physical keyboard, let's take up the whole screen and make it look really pretty. So that is a problem. Not the actual programming.
Well, this is part of why I don't want the on-screen keyboard. I prefer the tactile keyboard because I have my screen real estate dedicated to the app. Now, on a tablet or slate device, I'm 180 the other way. It's like it's the only good solution there is a good form factor fit keyboard. It's like I do not want a pop-up keyboard on a slate device. No. I know somebody's going to get cute and try that at some point, and I'm going to chuck it out the window or something. But, yeah, it's just, it doesn't work in that form factor. But on the phone, because the screen's so small and every inch of it's valuable, it's like it works better for my purposes. For how I use the phone. For how you use the phone, the on-screen keyboard may not bug you at all. And honestly, the UI things, I chalk that up to thinking the UI through. It's like, and it's clear some developers do bother to do that, and some don't.
And you can make UI for both. You can. I'm pretty sure something in the phone will say this phone has a physical keyboard because you can program it and you can make it. You know.
Well, no, it's like it's recognized as a query keyboard. It is a physically recognized device, and you can just put a logic test for it in the app that would assimilate for that perfectly.
That you can program it. Because before this look perfect on a different, but that's the thing. That is where it does have harder for developers. The input's the same, so a program will work no matter what. However, it won't look great no matter what. That's the thing.
There's a certain percentage of that actually built into the way Android handles that switch, and that 90% of these phones that have the slide-up keyboard like I like, when you slide up, it switches to the landscape mode, and it understands that you have an alternative keyboard, so that when you touch the things on the screen that would usually trigger the keyboard to come up, it doesn't. It knows not to. It's on. The apps I found had the biggest problem with this were ones that were made before this full transition and the redo of the on-screen keyboard in Android. Like apps that were made back in 1.5 days, in which they had a toggle thing that now got overridden by the keyboard because there was a change made after. If you update these apps, they fix. But if you had the old version before, there were issues. And hence, update your apps, and if the app isn't continuing to be developed, well, you might have a problem. It's like, but
I'm not talking about that. It's just that the screen itself too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not. I don't assume it's probably that much more work compared to making an app. But developers are lazy generally. I mean, I know I would be, that I would only want to program it once, but it's something that, you're always going to have changes, so. But it's just, yeah, it's not a huge difference because of what you said. It doesn't affect the program, but, anyway, I'm done.
No, it's like what you're getting into is the whole pro and con of development. By the way, your mic's going way up and down. I don't know if you got like a box checked for autocorrect or something.
I don't know what to say.
Okay.
Whoa.
I mean, this is the pro and con of one development model versus the other. Do we want to lock it down so that there's no choice for the end user, or as developers, do we want to acknowledge that a free end user being able to make their choice is a good thing for the end user because the end user's happier? It just means we have some more stuff to deal with. And honestly, both create problems for developers. This is part of being a developer. Solving the problems, creating a good product for the end user, and dealing with what's in front of you. It's like lockdown creates this whole other set of problems. Free and open creates another set of problems. It's like